Today, I'm speaking with Michael Kerkering, who's an independent filmmaker trying to break new ground in both filmmaking and distribution. His latest feature takes the skills he's honed as a travel content creator and applies them to a narrative film shot in some stunning, unconventional locations. We'll dive into the challenges of shooting in these unique locations, how he's making the film feel bigger than its budget, and how he wants to take a non traditional distribution approach to shake up the indie world. Here's my interview with Michael Kerkering. I figured, why don't you go ahead and give me a little background about you as a filmmaker and how you got started here?
Yeah, so I, like probably everyone who's doing this, just from a little kid, was obsessed with movies, and I kind of got into making movies because I was really into war movies, but my mom wouldn't let me watch most of them. But she would always throw like the behind the scenes, like bonus feature DVD on. Though, and I remember the most, I think it was Pearl Harbor, Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor back in like 2002, 3, something like that. It had an awesome behind the scenes, and they were blowing stuff up, and just I probably watched that way more than I ever watched the actual film. And I think that's what inspired me to kind of pick up the camera, started making like Lego movies when I was a kid. Never the stop motion stuff. I didn't have the patience for that. I would just like move them around with those little transparent sticks, and graduated from that to just making like movies with my friends. I was into Lord of the Rings, so we made sword movies, and then I was really into airsoft guns and like the Jason Bourne movies, so we would make like airsoft gun movies and stuff like that. And I kind of stopped really being into it only because I kind of became a jock in middle school and high school, from the standpoint of like I loved sports and football was like my life then. So I stopped making films sort of, but I kept editing. I always had my dad and my uncle and my older brother, whoever I could, go to my football games and film from as many different angles as possible. And then I would try to emulate like the NFL Films channel videos with like the highlight tapes I would make. And that basically rode that all the way through the end of high school, senior year, last football game, Friday Night Lights thing, crying on the field after our last game, knowing that part of my life was over because I wasn't going to play in college or anything like that. So I was like, well, I don't want to stop editing stuff. And that's when I kind of became like a GoPro kid, as everyone was doing then. This was like 2013, 14. Like I said, I grew up in Oregon. So we were always going snowboarding and hiking, and Oregon is a really beautiful, amazing outdoor state, to do stuff. So I just took the camera with me, and when we went snowboarding, when we went cliff jumping, and to hike at these waterfalls, these mountains, all that stuff, and just made like GoPro summer edits. Then I went to Florida State because that was kind of my dream school. My dad brainwashed me since birth to be Seminole fan. So I wanted to leave Oregon, went out there. I wasn't really taking filmmaking seriously. It was like, oh, I'm going to study that and that'll be my career. But in that moment, I was just kind of trying to be a college kid in a sunny state and stuff like that. And was learning pretty quickly I was not going to get into the Florida State Film School or even their communications program, which was kind of the next best thing. You needed like a 3.5 GPA to even be allowed to apply. So that was not going to work. And I was kind of like, do I transfer back home to the University of Oregon, where I was pretty much guaranteed to get into their program, or do I stay at the school I love and get a degree that's not really what I was going to be useful for me? And it was that same time that I saw my first Sam Colder video and Jay Alvarez videos, and what really ended up becoming the travel content creator community was really starting to explode then. And it made me go, oh, the stuff I used to make in kind of like the Devin Supertramp YouTube era, like there's a new audience for it. What essentially these guys were doing is they were making GoPro edits, but they were adding a little bit of story element to it, or they were using a DSLR for the non like action sport shots, because that's like when the 5D came out and that kind of changed the game, right? So all of a sudden I was super motivated to go back to Oregon, was kind of like, screw the college thing. I did stay in college, but I sold my car, all my Air Jordans that I had a huge collection of shoes back then. And I bought my first DSLR, my first drone, which back then was, I remember pre-ordering the Phantom 3 Pro. If anybody's into the drones, that one was like game changing because it was the first like stabilized 4K camera that went with the drone. And I basically dove headfirst into the travel content creator community universe, if you will. And at that time, everyone doing that was like some sort of aspiring filmmaker. long story short, what ended up happening, I did that for like 5 years, and it was awesome. Like, I did it locally, like in Oregon, and like road trips in the States, because I was still finishing college. When I did finish college, I finally started traveling the world, so to speak. Nowhere near as successfully as a lot of these guys I admired, and I also was never doing the proper things to like grow on YouTube and Instagram, because I was just wanting to make the more long form videos, and social media was very quickly moving to the short form content. And to wrap all that up, basically in 2022, my now wife, who I met during all these travel endeavors, she's from Argentina. We met in Hawaii on a trip I was on, and we had just wrapped up a big South America trip. A lot of like my dream places. We hit Peru, Brazil, Patagonia, Colombia. Had a lot of amazing footage, a lot of amazing content, and I never got around to editing anything from that because I just wasn't feeling it anymore. I was kind of feeling a little depressed and lost, thinking like, hey, I got in this to like become a filmmaker, a director. I want to make movies one day, and I feel like I'm not on the right path. Everyone in this field is kind of going a different direction. And I knew I wanted to make something different at that time, but I didn't want to stop traveling and filming in the locations that you get when you do that type of content. Because at the time, all my friends that were dabbling in short films and stuff, there was just a lack of quality in what they were typically able to produce with low budgets and stuff that kind of kept me away. I was very like into the cinema and like dialogue scenes with actors and all that, but I was just feeling really lost. And long story short, that ended up getting me on the path of like, well, what if I took like actors and wrote a story, but then we travel and logistically go on a trip like it's one of these content trips, and we use these locations to like basically be the production design that you almost can't put a price tag on at that point.
So I have some follow up questions there, but we'll talk about that here in a second. So you're making your first feature film right now, is that correct?
Yep.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Like about 3 years ago, the idea of where I am right now, that I'm in post production on a feature film, like a full blown feature film that is worthy of that title, would have been kind of crazy to me. What I essentially wanted to do back then was just go make like a much more epic, more narrative style travel vlog. So I was still thinking inside of that space, that YouTube travel creator community scene, and just wanted to stand out there. And it was, as I was trying to figure out what to do, I knew I wanted to go to Indonesia to do it, because that's like the bucket list destination in that world, mostly because Bali's there and a lot of creators in that world try to live there and use it as a hub. And it's just an amazing place with beauty everywhere. The photos, the videos, are amazing. So I was like, I'm going to finally do my Indonesia video that I've been putting off for years at this point. And then I quickly did realize, okay, I can't be in this. Like, I'm kind of writing a story here, and it was going to be a short film, and then quickly ended up becoming a feature film. What happened was I got with my buddy from high school, Ricky, who's a screenwriter and actually studied that. And even though I had this whole concept of the story I wanted to tell and kind of these characters, I had no idea how to write a screenplay. Like, and I'm not good with writing or reading. I have dyslexia, ADD. I'm a podcast guy. I listen to things and I watch things. So I basically would just send him all these Google Docs of just my crazy notes and like what I would want a scene to be and the feeling, and he would turn it into the script, um, using cell text is what we used because he was back in Oregon. And then once it was on the page, I felt very comfortable going in and editing. Oh, there's an action line. I'll change it to what I want. There's that dialogue. I'll change that to what I want. And he played a massive role in the project as well, like helping me conceptualize the story and stuff like that too. So we wrote this story together, and that took a little over a year. I mean, we never really finished. We were, up until the moment I went and shot, we were still writing and just fine tuning. But it took about a year to really get the script going. And then around that same time, I was kind of wrestling with the idea of like, hey, is this going to be the little fun passion project that I'll spend like X amount of my savings on, with no expect of making money or returning anything, just, a fun little project? Or what had ended up happening at that same time is I had been deep diving into all sorts of content very similar to yours. Probably the most popular one I was paying attention to was Alex Ferrari's Indie Film Hustle podcast, which I'm sure you're aware of, right? And I got a hold of his book, and it just so happened that the film I was already planning to make, I realized was hitting a lot of like these things that were, referenced there, specifically the niche audience. The thing I was making was entirely going to be targeted at this travel creator community as an audience. The film, like the story of the film, takes place inside of that world. The main character is an aspiring content creator who's living in Bali and then gets kind of swept off on this grand adventure. So, and on Alex Ferrari's podcast, I saw a lot of episodes with a guy named Franco Sama. I don't know if you've seen any of those episodes, but he's an executive producer from Hollywood. Um, for like 30 years now, he's done at least 25 films. You'd recognize a fair amount of the titles, probably. And I was like, okay, that's the guy I need to talk to see, like, on the business side of things that I was really green on at the time and trying to figure out, like, do I have something here? Could this actually be like a potential commercial product as a film? Because if so, I'm willing to put a lot more into it, and I can justify that to myself, to my wife, right? That this is more of a family decision of like really following a dream here. So I got him on the phone or on a Zoom one time, and I kind of said, hey man, like, I just want to talk to you about this idea. This isn't the type of guy that is going to read a script or, really pay much attention to the story. He's straight business, which that's what I needed in that moment. I had all the people I needed for story referencing and like, creative stuff. And I basically told him my ideas like, hey man, I think I can go into these locations and produce these type of images. I kind of showed him my old travel films and some of the better travel films that I admired from the other creators. Because he had no idea about that world, on YouTube, because he's a little bit older. He's probably in his mid-60s now. And he was kind of blown away by the images, and he got on the phone with me, and I said, hey, I know where this audience is online, and I'm thinking, worst case scenario, I can just target them with ads or something and not rely on distributors if I don't have to, because listening to Alex's podcast every day as I was back then, I was just hearing all of the horror stories about, distribution and how complicated that side of it is, but also learning you need to figure something out in that area or you might make a film and it would go to die. I mean, I was just heartbroken listening to all the different stories he was telling of filmmakers just like me, just like you, that poured their heart into something, because that's what we are. We're artists trying to make films. We're not really trying to run businesses like and think in that mindset, but because of that, we get very taken advantage of. So I feel extremely lucky that I was kind of learning about all that stuff while pursuing my film. And this Franco Sama, he loved my idea, which blew me away at the time. I was like, what is this guy blowing smoke? Like, I'm a nobody. And he's like, was really in love with the kind of the business idea of like, oh, you have this audience. He was like, can you really make a film of that quality on that low of a budget? Because in the Hollywood world, they just don't understand, right? That run and gun style and shooting on location. They're starting to, right? You see films like The Creator, which of course was still massive Hollywood, but for their standard, a little, taken down in the production to be small and be able to shoot on location. And he basically told me like, hey, I don't quite know what you're trying to do, but I'm sold on you, and I want to help you with this, which was like the most flattering thing I had like ever heard at the time. I was like, this Hollywood guy wants to kind of help me with my movie. And he's been my mentor ever since then. And he's actually the consulting producer on my film, which is awesome. And he basically said, if you go shoot this thing and bring it back, because the problem was I was never going to be able to get it funded in the beginning, because as good as the kind of business side was, no one was going to give me the money to go shoot in this guerrilla faction, which I don't blame them. I wouldn't have done it either. So I was never even thinking that. But I knew I had a kind of a big idea for the scope of the project that I knew would require some post-production budget. It's not full of VFX, but there's just a couple sequences that would need it. And I kind of designed the whole film to like play in a theater and have like an immersive sound design and score. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to do the thing where I'll just figure out how to sound mix myself and all, and I also crave collaboration. I love working with other artists, and during that time honing in on what a director really is it's having a vision, but then collaborating with the people that are actually going to bring that vision to life. So that whole next year was, my wife became my producer. She handled all the logistics for me, because there was a ton of planning that needed to be done with like coordinators in Indonesia, getting hotels and transportation and like booking some of the excursions, and a couple of locations we actually did have to like almost rent or, get releases for. Where most of it was just, we're in the wilderness, we could be completely a guerrilla. So she was kind of handling all that, and I was working commercially with a DP at the time here in Tampa. His name's Deontrez Mount. We call him D. He's an ex-NFL player, hilarious, awesome guy. So we really connect on like football and stuff. And he was doing a lot of amazing commercials. And he kind of took me under his wing when I wanted to learn more about, lighting. And I never thought he would ever DP a movie for me, but I was asking him about how I should approach a DP. And I brought him my images and kind of my pitch deck. And halfway through the conversation, he was like, kind of like, dude, like, why didn't you ask me? And I was like, kind of like, wait, you would want to do this? And he was like, I was like, I don't have any money. Like, it's going to be a passion project, And he was like, dude, hell yeah. Like, you want to take me to Bali and make the movie in those locations? Like, he was kind of really excited about that. So we then spent like another half year developing the look, choosing the different lenses we like, because I had a really specific look I was going for on this. And after that, it was casting, which was really awesome because I got to cast worldwide, because I was gonna have to fly these people to Indonesia anyway, so I could throw a huge net out there. And we got, most of them were American, 5 of them are right there in Los Angeles, including our lead. But we had a guy come in from the UK. Our second co-star actress is from Hungary. She's German, but she lives in Hungary right now. So that was really cool. And then we got a couple, because there's several Indonesian characters in the film. 3 of them are from the United States. They just have Indonesian and or Filipino, ethnicity. And then one of them is an actual guy from Jakarta, an actor in Indonesia that played one of the roles as well. So after casting, it was just, me and my wife did everything as far as like getting costumes, all this stuff that we were going to have to pack up and take to Indonesia. And then we went to war over there for about 2.5 months of gnarly shooting.
Before we move on, I wanted to quickly go over some of the ways that you can support me. The easiest way is subscribing to my channel and watching my latest videos. I've also started a membership program that gives you early access to videos before they go live. It starts at just $3 a month on YouTube and Patreon, and if memberships aren't your thing, you can buy individual posts directly on Patreon without the membership fee. My feature film Cashing Out is available to watch on major platforms like Amazon and Apple TV, and you can even watch for free on platforms like Tubi, Plex, and YouTube. If you want to support directly, there's a pay what you want option on my own OTT platform that starts at just $2. And if you do watch the film, it would mean the world to me to leave a review on IMDb, Letterboxd, or your favorite platform. Lastly, if you're interested in my future film projects, you can sign up for my email list. I have some exciting new films that I can't wait to share with you all. All of these items will be linked in the description below. Thank you so much for the support. Now let's get back to the show. That's a good segue into my next question, because like something I've always been kind of curious about, being a content creator myself, and just the logistics behind how people do things. And you're doing things, overseas, and there's a lot of traveling and all that. So I'm just curious, just purely about the logistics, about how do you shoot like in the jungle? How do you coordinate all this stuff so you can keep things within a budget? That's something I'm very curious about to get your perspective on.
Yeah. So for me, it was like, this is like the only project I could have actually handled as a first time project. And I think for a lot of people, they're going to see what we did and think that's insane. How did you operate? But this is what I was already doing. I wasn't making cinema. I wasn't making films, but my wife and I, and often collaborating with other creators as well, we're going into these crazy locations, going on long hikes to get deep into these immersive mountains or jungles, waterfalls, whatever have you, right? In that community, it's always chasing vistas, right? So I was used to that. Now, when I was going there, I was just pulling out the Sony, throwing it on the gimbal, and just getting B-roll till you lose light, right? And then you kind of would take your footage and make some sort of cinematic recap of your trip. That's basically what that niche is. So the logistics of planning a trip like this, how we would get around, how we would hop out of cars, go on hikes, pull out cameras, that really didn't change. And that's really why I was able to handle this film, because logistically, it was something I was very used to. Now, this was the biggest group I had done it with, because we got up to around 15 people and at its peak. Not everyone was there the entire time. There were a couple actors that came in for a couple weeks in the beginning, but then they weren't needed. And then a couple actors came like the final 3 or 4 weeks. but most of them were there the full 6 weeks that we shot. And then 2 weeks before we like really started, my crew and I were there. And when I say crew, I'm talking me and 3 other people, my wife, my DP, and then my boy Brian, who was like our AC/drone operator. But really, obviously on set, all of us were just wearing every hat. You know, many times I'm saying action with the headphones in, holding the mix pre, hitting audio, sometimes even holding a catch light or something. And I knew how to do the run and gun style, right, for the YouTube. And it's all about using the natural light in these locations. So you do a lot of studying, whether you're making a film like this or being the content creator. You study when the light's going to be best in those locations, and you just try to time it up right. Now, what my DP and I had to work on was, because this was a feature film, natural light wasn't going to cut it, as far as we needed to nail contrast ratios, right? And we weren't going to be able to have any light stands. We did not take a single light stand with us over to Indonesia. And we also did not use a single light that you would put on a light stand. We basically used catch lights and small tube lights, but was the most efficient thing. My DP discovered these mirrors. It's like a mirror system where they're numbered. Like number 1 is a straight up reflection mirror. Number 2 is a little softer, all the way down to like, I think number 6. And as long as you have the sun, or not even the sun, just light in the day, you can create a 3-point lighting system pretty easily with those mirrors. So for all of our mediums and close-up out in the wilderness, we just would find out where the sun is, get the mirror off screen, there's your key light. That same mirror would reflect to someone standing off screen here that's doing the backlight. And then you could even reflect to the fill light if you wanted. So that allowed us to just move super fast. And the camera we used, which was honestly another game changer, and we didn't know we were going to have this camera until about a month before we left. And I can't imagine not having it now that I had it. And that was the DJI Ronin 4D, which now I am seeing is become popularized. Like that adolescent show with all the Wonders, they were using it. I saw in Civil War by Alex Garland, they were using it. And it's when I told my DP about that camera at first, in typical DP fashion, he was like, "Oh, what? No, screw that. What is that thing? Like, I don't want to use that." Right. But then like a couple weeks later, he hit me up. He was like, "We have to get that camera." Because he was finally understanding what environment we were going to be in and how we were never going to have time to flip around and get our reverse coverages and like have a setup, because we would have very minimal time in a lot of these locations to get the light we wanted. And that camera allowed us to be as quick as I was with my gimbal on my Sony. But unlike those gimbals that don't have, they just have the 3 axes. The 4D, I'm sure you're aware, right, has that built-in Z axis. So that was a game changer for us, because it allowed us to get any type of dynamic shot we wanted, despite being in these locations where we had no dolly track, no cranes, none of that stuff. However, when you look at some of the shots, it looks like we have a techno crane in the middle of a jungle or on the side of a mountain, and we don't. And that's was just so eye-opening to me in the indie film world as it's expanding, is like, hey, we were getting shots that not even 5 or 10 years ago might have cost millions in some cases, because the crane you would have had to bring in, the planning and logistics to bring that equipment in, the insurance you would have needed, right? Like you would have had to be a more full-scale production to do that. And we were able to get a lot of those shots spontaneously just by seeing it. So keeping the crew light enough, keeping the equipment light enough, but knowing exactly what we wanted to do. I mean, we rehearsed just like random scenarios, not even scenes from the film, but just like, okay, if we want to point the camera here, can we do that? Bam, put the lights up. Okay, we just got a medium. Oh, and then hypothetically, we want to move it over here now. And that camera allowed us to do that. So when we got into any environment, I could like look around, see what was there. And I always had a game plan and always had a prime location I wanted to go to. But I also knew in this environment, again, just like being a creator, sometimes you get to a place and, oh, there's too many people to shoot here. Or some places they don't like you shooting there, so they might make you leave, you know. And going to Indonesia, where everywhere around us was this vast playground, that was our production design that you really couldn't put a price tag on, because within spitting distance of everywhere we were staying was some iconic location that you just typically don't see in a low budget indie film, right? And knowing the indie film rules, where you typically want to keep your world small, you want to have minimal characters, right? They always say, like, find that script that's 2 actors in 1 house, right? That's the low budget formula. And that's important. But knowing that allowed me to basically break all those rules and say, hey, well, if we all fly to this location and operate how I know how to operate with like a crew of creators and just access these locations that are all around us, that really gave us the freedom to get into these environments, time it up with the light and with a very minimal crew and setup, not sacrifice quality of image most of the time or dynamic camera movements if necessary too. I mean, we did a lot of handheld shooting because there was a lot of scenes I wanted that feel, but we could do whatever we wanted essentially. And it was a really freeing moment for me being a first time director. I basically spent most of the planning setting up situations that I knew I would be successful in, right? I would have had a much harder time showing up on big built sets with a bunch of crew members. That's still very foreign to me. You know, maybe one day, I hope, obviously, but in order to make this film successful, my wife and I just tried to create as many situations where it's something we knew we would be able to handle. And that doesn't mean it wasn't extremely hard and extremely stressful. It was by far the most insane thing I've ever done. But if it wasn't for all that planning and trusting our ability to do what we had already done in locations like this, we probably wouldn't have been able to do it.
How did you handle sound? Because I can only imagine if you're shooting in the jungle, the sound's probably a nightmare.
Yeah, so my plan with that was like, look, we're going to be expecting to pick up anything other than dialogue. So we used a mix pre-recorder, which I was running most of the time and listening with headphones, and everyone was lobbed up. We never really had more than 4 people talking at a time, and the mix pre we had 4 channels, so that was fine. And I just knew from the get-go, everything all the way up to Folly is going to be completely remade later. I just knew if I could go and get the images over there, and they were what I was hoping they would look like in my head, because the whole idea was like, when I'm seeing this in my head, I'm seeing these locations, I know what cameras we're going to be using, I know what lenses I want, I know what story I'm telling. This looks like a Hollywood movie in my head. And you were wrestling like, is that arrogance? Like probably everyone thinks that, right? When they go make a film. But it wasn't like I was relying on some crazy amount of talent or skill I had. I just knew what these locations looked like. I mean, there's a ton of videos on YouTube from myself and people way better than me where you can see how high quality these images are. So it's really just attuned to the location doing most of the work and then how awesome modern camera technology is. I mean, we all know, right? The creator was shot on the FX3, the camera that I was using and so many people in that space were using. So the tools are there. And if you just kind of know what you're doing and know what story you want to tell, like really anything's possible now. It's a really exciting time, I think, for indie film.
One thing I'm really curious about as far as logistics go, when you're shooting in a place like LA or, maybe a bigger production state, you're going to have to deal with permits and stuff like that. If you're shooting something like smaller and guerrilla style, you're probably not thinking about that too much. But as far as like your production, like, is that something you had to worry about? Or is shooting in these foreign countries fair game, I guess, for lack of better words?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, I'm not 1000% sure about all of that. But I know, like, as YouTubers going over there, we pull our cameras out. We're not nothing. Like, a camera and a gimbal is kind of a footprint, right? And they operate very freely there. The locals there are very, very friendly. 99% of the time, it was like, oh, what are you doing? Can I help? I mean, we literally, like, last minute casted some locals, just threw them into the background of scenes, and they were so excited most of the time. It really was more of a tourist thing that we were concerned about. Some of these locations are very popular and there's a bunch of people there and we're trying to, fantasize the world a little bit and make it seem more isolated. So that was what we were more concerned of than like, I guess like local authority, for example. There was, and when we shot in Bromo National Park, we were trying to keep our footprint as small as possible because that was the one place we knew, like, if we were really making a big footprint, they'd be like, hey, is this like a full-blown production? Because if it is, they do have like a procedure for that. But my thing was like, hey, we're not operating at any bigger of a footprint than most of these content creators are. That's another reason why I didn't like use boom poles or anything, because that's just such the dead giveaway that you're like making something bigger, right? And like the 4D, the way you can operate with it, I mean, we would wear an easy rig a lot, but you're barely making a bigger footprint than the kid with the gimbal, doing his content. And in all these locations, they're used to seeing those people. So we basically just passed off as content creators the whole time, for the most part. We had a slightly bigger crew than most of them. But yeah, as far as that stuff goes, that's all it was. And then there was one location in a cave where we did pay like a production fee to like rent the whole thing out, because there's just no way we would have been able to do what we wanted to do in there if we just like joined a normal tour and went down there for the hour and a half they let you be down there. So, and that was by the most expensive thing, like item on the whole film, probably was like paying for that location and locking it down for like a whole day. And we didn't even finish. We had to come back the next day with the tours and finish the last couple of shots. But yeah, it was very comfortable being guerrilla there.
So one thing I'd like to ask filmmakers is, especially at our budget level, is how do you make a smaller production feel big? Now you're in a bit of a unique situation because you're filming with drones a lot and just filming in these crazy locations. But the question that I have for you is like with my film, I tried to do the same thing, try to just make bigger or smaller scenes feel bigger, right? Whether that's shooting wider or trying to find a unique location. There's a location in my movie, and I'll pop it up on screen here. But I filmed I live right up against Lake Michigan, and we got all the dunes and stuff like that. So I'm like, I really want to shoot on the dunes to kind of make this feel more epic. And I don't feel like I did a very good job at that. And I feel like, even if you're going to these crazy locations, like the shots matter at the end of the day, right? To make them feel massive and big and unique and just epic, right? So what's your advice to just make things feel more epic than maybe they are?
So for me, it was like it's almost hard to explain. Like I just growing up, or not growing up, but doing the content creator thing and being in those locations, it just started to get an eye for different angles and different lenses, and focal lengths of lenses and different sensor formats to achieve different type of images. And honestly, me personally, I never graduated the level of being a pristine photographer or cinematographer. I'm definitely one of those people with shooting where like my taste is much better than my actual skill. So as far as the shots we got, it was really a lot of communication with my DP. I am a very good communicator. It's probably my number one skill if I have one. So I was able to communicate with him, who was a significantly better cinematographer than I was, what I wanted, what I was going for. We could look at all these locations. Almost every location we shot at, somebody had gone there and got an epic angle of it that I loved, right? So like my reference mood board sheet was literally just screenshots of all these Instagram photos, all these YouTube videos from creators, both ones I loved and then also ones that I didn't like that much. So I could say, hey, I don't like what these guys did. I don't like the angles they took, because as you just said, and it's, forget the locations, it's the same story of like, you can go buy a really nice camera and that does not mean your images are going to look great. If you don't know where to put it, and if you don't know how to light, right? Like lighting is so much more important than the camera. And a lot of us say that, like we know that, but most people don't act that way. I know that the new Sony camera is about to drop, and I know a bunch of people are probably going to buy it. And it's like, if you're up and coming right now, please don't buy that camera. Go buy the FX3 that's about to be extremely discounted, and then go learn lighting. Every day I'm learning more and more with lighting, and my DP was very good with lighting, and he really embraced the challenge because he was used to more studio lighting. So he really enjoyed the challenge of like trying to replicate, a feature film contrast ratio with the lighting. But really it was just studying the locations and studying the angles you wanted. And then for me, right, communicating that to my DP, because once we got to the locations, I would kind of tell him like, okay, see, we talked about this, there's that stuff. But then I would kind of have to go get the actors ready, right? As the director, that was much more important for me. And I was able to trust him so much to always set up what we wanted. And like I said, because we had that camera and could play, a lot of spontaneous stuff happened. I mean, my philosophy, and I totally take this from Denis Villeneuve, who's one of my favorite directors, is when we're there, it's like the storyboards shots like are the priority, but nature can supersede the storyboards, right? If we get to a place and the location is telling us something incredible that we can't pass up, we will adjust that on the fly. So there was, I would say 50% of the time we got into a location and it was just exactly the angles I was imagining and what I thought we would get. And 50% of the time we would get there and it would completely switch. And my DP like really loves getting shots and has tons of ideas. So what we would do is I was like, look, I have the storyboard shots that I know I need for the film that's in my head. And as soon as we got those, I would often be like, D, take over. What do you see here? What do you want to get? And because he's extremely talented and I want to know what his eye is seeing. That's why I have him, right? And then he would get his perspective. And there were even several times where I would actually walk off with Carmela, my wife, and we would start talking about the next day, and he would just take the actor and do some of the ideas he had. And obviously that's beneficial now being in post, right? We have everything that I wanted for the most part, and then any extra idea or thing he saw on set that he wanted to capture, we got. So I think, and forget locations again for a second, to really answer your question. Sorry, I went on there for a second, but making things bigger than they are, I think it really just comes down to understanding what your budget level is, and whatever you're going to put on the screen, make sure you can do it at a Hollywood level, or just don't do it, right? That's the biggest thing I think a lot of filmmakers make. Like, if you're telling a story that's too big for your budget, that's usually when I watch a lot of these indie films, and I've been just studying indie films for the last couple of years, watching as many of them as possible, especially ones that found commercial success and whatnot. And for me, what takes me out of the movie is just any time something on screen just isn't quite there. I saw a movie at a festival recently it was doing really good for a second, and then there was just this really fake fire, just the worst type of VFX shot you could have seen, right? And it wasn't needed. Like, if like, he should have known, hey, this isn't going to look good, so we don't need the fire, right? And I would have stayed in it. So I think that's the key. Whatever you're doing, if you're shooting in a room and it's like people at a restaurant, just make sure you light that properly and it looks as good or as close to as good as you would see in a big time production. Now, you're right. I kind of had what I felt like was a cheat code, where I was like, well, if we take these cameras and these sensors to these locations where the sun at the right time of day is going to do 80% of that lighting for us. Well, my drone operator, I trust his eye on cinematography, and he knows what my vision is. And my DP's here, and I really trust him with cinematography, and he knows my vision. I mean, I would say that was really it right there. That combined with then guiding the performances of the actors. And when those three things come together, you definitely can, I think, achieve that thing of looking bigger than your budget.
So in terms of your budget, as far as production goes, about like what did you spend, like, give or take, and I guess, like, how did shooting in these locations kind of impact your overall costs?
Yeah. So, I mean, I won't tell you exactly what it is yet. And also, we're in post, and that's the whole second half. So it is climbing from that, which was expected. But yeah, production was about $100,000, which I know probably sounds wild compared to a lot of the people making low budget films. I know a lot of people making films for 15,000, 10,000, like under 50. But that was about as cheap as you could have done it. That is essentially just the cost of travel, right? Like, the plane tickets alone to get everyone there was like 38 grand. More than that, because then we had some flight delays coming home, and that was hell. But then just housing everyone and feeding everyone, that was it. But if we would have done that here in the United States, I've kind of done the math, it would have been like 3.5 million to just do the exact same type of operation, housing people in American costs. Because in Indonesia, your dollar goes very, very far. I mean, you can go get a big, crazy plate of food in Bali, right? Sushi easily would be a $200 meal here in the United States, and the bill might be 22 bucks. So living like a king is more that price tag. Obviously, we didn't live that lavishly. And when we got into Eastern Java, you couldn't even eat or live that lavishly. Like, you couldn't find a 5-star resort hotel if you wanted to. So, I mean, you can stay in pretty nice places in Indonesia for less than $15-20 a night per person in a lot of cases. And working with some of our local coordinators there that are our local Indonesian content creators that pump out content and work with a lot of these resorts, they were able to leverage that to get us a lot of discounts on places, and then they would like make content for them. And it was a win for them because I kind of paid for their stay to come along with us. And I said, hey, feel free to leverage your social media to get us access. And then if that gets you like a job or a side job, like, go for it. Like, I wanted to create as many win-wins as possible. And I also looked at it because, trust me, it's the most expensive thing I've ever done. And it was incredibly daunting. And I completely self-funded that. I had about half of it saved up, and then I borrowed the other half. But I felt very comfortable taking that risk because, again, talking with my consulting producer about what we thought this film could be, I just felt very confident that if I went and executed what I wanted to execute over there and got these images, that we were going to have something that was going to look more akin to a $10 million film. And I think it doesn't matter what your budget is. It more matters what you're getting for that budget. So I'll spend $100,000 no problem if the product's going to look like a $10 million film, which is kind of what we're trying to go for here. But yeah, that was the production budget. And then I wouldn't be surprised if the post-production budget gets to at least half of that, maybe a little bit more. Cause like I said, there's some VFX that they have to look good. Like I just explained, right? We're very satisfied with the images we brought back. With the lenses we use, the camera, I mean, it looks beautiful. So we can't risk the audience getting taken out of the movie if some of these effects elements don't match that. So that needs to be done right. And then, like I said, the sound, I'm a big sound guy. Like to me, again, to quote Denis Villeneuve, cinema is pure image and sound for me. And I really designed this film to be like an opera, be like of an immersive experience, which is another thing I feel like lacks in a lot of the lower budget indie films, which doesn't need to. You don't have to just put a bunch of OTS dialogue shots like a TV show just because your budget's low, right? So I tried as hard as I could to find this story in my head and like find the poetry of the images that I was going for, like what was the mise-en-scène going to be in the film, and then communicate with that with my DP so that when we got there, we have these epic locations, we have a good setup. Hopefully I did my job as a storyteller achieving these images, and right now we are seeing it all come together in post, and it's really rewarding.
Did you try to do any sort of crowdfunding or looking for investors or anything like that? Or did you always just kind of know, like, I'm going to be the one who has to pay for this and I'm going to have to figure out the money by any means necessary?
Yeah, I mean, so I had already been saving up to do something, right? Again, when I first started, I didn't know it was going to be a feature film. I thought it was maybe just going to be the most epic travel vlog I was in my life, but I had been putting money aside to do something pretty cool. Like I had 20 saved up, and then I had 50 saved up, but I wasn't going to spend that to just go make a fun vlog, right? I was going to be comfortable taking maybe 20 grand of my savings, just doing this epic vlog and kind of using it as a profile piece, and then say goodbye to travel content and see what the rest of the film world had to offer me. But after talking to Franco, and him saying, no, you might have something there, I decided to fork out the rest of my own cash and then borrow what I needed to get the production done. And again, like I said, even though we felt comfortable with the business idea for the film, no one was going to give me money to go. It was too risky what I was trying to do over there. Like I wouldn't have blamed them, right? I wouldn't have given someone money to go do that either, right? Like I didn't know if we were going to pull it off. When we got on the plane, I was like, all right, I hope we get this done. But it was very possible something could have gone wrong. You know, I think God was looking out for us over there because we had a lot of close calls. You know, we didn't have like big production insurance. I made sure everyone had their own individual travel health insurance plan, but it really was that guerrilla. You know, I mean, you have to get around on motorbikes a lot over there, you know? So like a lot of us are like, we're basically driving motorcycles around. I mean, accidents can happen, and thank God nothing like that did happen. But I knew no one was going to give me money to go shoot it. But because I felt comfortable about the commercial potential of the film with the niche audience and all that stuff, I felt comfortable that if I brought these images back, I would be able to raise additional money for post. And that's what we're in the process of right now. Haven't quite got it yet, but Franco, who has my pitch deck now and has the connections to financiers in Hollywood, is essentially what he does. He's been taking meetings like for the last couple of weeks now because we just kind of launched that. And maybe I'll let you know how that goes, but we are raising money for post-production now. I have an editor already and I've been working with him. But the other collaborators we want to bring on, we're going to have to pay them. And that's what that money is going to be for.
So something I'm really curious about. So you and I have similar kind of journeys, but almost like we're doing them opposite. So I was really like, got to make movies right now. So I spent after high school and my college years up until I turned 30, spent all my time making movies, right? Any production I could get on, I made a movie. And now I've kind of shifted a little bit into doing a lot more content creation, not even just with this channel, but like my full-time job is content creation. I work for another YouTuber, a large YouTuber. So I've just learned a lot of things from that I know I could apply later to this, right? And you started as a content creator, even if you wanted to make movies, right? But you started as a content creator and now you've kind of shifted into filmmaking. So not necessarily from like a production standpoint or anything like that, like from an audience building standpoint, what has being a content creator taught you that you've been able to apply into building an audience for a movie?
Well, it's kind of a tough question because, like I alluded to before, I actually didn't spend a lot of time doing the proper things as a content creator to actually grow on the platforms. I essentially just wanted, my passion was making like the 5 to 8 minute travel recap videos. And I only even posted Instagram photos and stuff to try to build a little audience to funnel them over to that, right? And by the time it was all about posting reels, like, I mean, I was doing it a little bit, but I just, like I said, I really hated that. And like, that wasn't what I was trying to do. I regret that a little bit now because if I had built a bigger audience in that space, I probably could have crowdfunded some stuff, right? I don't know how familiar you are with that space, but I imagine right now, like, dang, like if Sam Newton or Sam Colder had this idea, they could totally get something funded and then probably go make it even better than me because, those guys are extremely talented. So, I just think in that world, a lot of those people, maybe they want to make movies, but they just don't think it's possible, right? Like they know they can make these awesome YouTube videos. They work for big brands and stuff, but the idea of making a feature film, I think that just seems so foreign to them because that was foreign to me too, until discovering Alex's book and realizing how I could adapt that to what I had done. So for me, the biggest thing I got from it was that it gave me the confidence to go make this film in the style I wanted to make it, where I was like, wow, like I'm already kind of going out and getting images like this. I know how to do that. Let's just add a few more people and actually have a story we're telling when we get to these locations. And then, like I said, just kind of rely on the locations to do so much of the work from a production design standpoint. And then obviously me trying to make sure I'm the best storyteller. Because once I knew we were going there, writing the script, it was all about, oh, the location, it's going to be awesome. Our movie's going to be like the creator. Like what I told everyone that I was casting and the collaborators, I was like, look, we're basically trying to do the ultra micro budget version of what the creator did. Because everybody was kind of watching all that BTS at that time that was really popping off. That also gave me the confidence. And it was a really good kind of comp. Again, I know that's Hollywood. That was huge budget compared to what I did. But it was like the same type of thing where for Hollywood, they really brought the scale down and the way that they shot. And I was like, we're doing the micro budget version of that. It's actually more akin to if you've seen Garth Edwards' first film, Monsters, and how they shot that in 2010, where it was really just him, a camera, the two actors, the jungle, and then he had a very strong VFX background and was able to put, some cool stuff in there throughout that film. But really just seeing what other people had done, again, from the logistics standpoint, and being confident in the skills I was building as a storyteller and as a director, it was just putting those two things together, and making it happen.
So I'm curious, do you have any, were there any sort of unique I mean, you spoke about some of the challenges, but is there any other unique challenges or things that happened during production, shooting on those locations, shooting at these locations you didn't anticipate?
Didn't anticipate, not as many, because I was expecting everything, the worst, right? So like weather stuff happened a lot, but again, we figured that could happen. And then there were contingencies for all that. Like, okay, well, we were going to do the sunrise thing here, but it's cloudy. Well, right down the road is an embedded jungle and we have scenes in there. So let's just go over there. Um, the main challenges, honestly, were like some of the back end logistical stuff. Typically, every time we got to a location and had proper lighting, we could execute. It was rare that we couldn't achieve something that we wanted in camera or had a technical issue for the most. But now the 4D did give us some trouble. And because we got it so late before we went over there, we didn't even get the most out of it. There are some shots that weren't as stable as they could have been with that camera because the Z-axis wasn't working. We never got the LiDAR autofocus system to work, which we weren't going to use that much anyway, but there was a couple tracking shots where the lens was pretty wide open that would have been nice. Most of the issues were like, for example, ordering food. Like when you go to Bali by yourself and you pull up they call it the Gojek app, right? And that's how you would like have a guy on a motorcycle bring you food. Well, doing that for like 15 people every night was like extremely challenging. The orders would get canceled, and the last thing you want is like a hungry cast and crew, over there. So that ended up being really challenging. Every day we were kind of coordinating with these drivers, right? Specifically in Bali, because in Java we had the same drivers take us everywhere. They basically lived with us, which was so nice. But in Bali we had a home base. In Bali we stayed in Ubud at a hotel. And every day we'd have a driver come pick us up. And these drivers are used to every day picking up some tourist somewhere to take them somewhere cool, whatever. But we were really demanding a lot of these drivers compared to what they were normally used to, which is fine. I was willing to pay them extra for the extra hours of service I was requesting. But a lot of them were, I don't want to say like lazy or anything, but basically we're like, yeah, I do not want to drive for those guys again. Like they kept me there extra hours. It was like really long. So we had a lot of times where like drivers would cancel on us like last minute. Like it's 3 a.m. We're about to leave in 2 hours. And my coordinator Angel would come in. That's her name, Angel. She would come in and be like, Michael, like the driver canceled or he blocked us. He's not calling back. And now they had a ton of contacts and they were so amazing. We could not have made the film without them. They would like last minute get another driver, or we always found a solution, but there were a lot of almost mishaps. My DP got in a motor, like crashed his motorbike one time, just driving, because you're driving motorbikes over there and it's really sketchy the way they drive over there. That was crazy because it's like, I mean, we could have lost him, which would have been devastating, but he had a pretty gnarly shoulder injury from that. And he's a trooper and like a baller. So he just like literally a couple hours later was like, I'm good. And I was like, dude, no, you're not. Go to the hospital. And you know, his shoulder was pretty messed up and I had to operate for like a week because of that. He was still able to like DP and control light, you know, and do his thing, but I had to like operate for a week because of that. And gosh, I'm trying to think because we're almost coming up on a year since we shot. It was all last summer. But really most of the issues, or like, for example, we would be driving on a road trip. People would have to go to the bathroom. We're in the middle of East Java. Dude, over there, like these pit stop bathrooms, it's a hole in the ground. Like, and I had a hard time with that. So I can only imagine what some of the females were probably going through. And it definitely doesn't look too sanitary. I mean, even the nice places we stayed in by your cushy American standard of living were not that great, right? So a lot of the challenges just came from that. We finished really late and we're in Bromo National Park. We go into the town and like all the restaurants are closed and people are starving. Like it was really a lot of stuff like that. Or like, hey, my wife was doing everything right logistically. Like she's producing, she's doing filmmaking stuff with us, but she's like in charge of the costumes and having to like sometimes trust the actors, like, hey, hold on to that costume, which that was a mistake because, you know, they're not used to doing that. You know, they're used to wardrobe people and like, you know, going into a trailer and getting makeup on. They had to like do their own makeup. And sometimes they would bring the wrong costume out to the shoot and we'd have to decide, like, is that a continuity issue or can we roll with that? Just all sorts of little things like that, honestly. But nothing like what you would expect probably, but tons of random things that kind of came out of nowhere.
So when you initially contacted me, you mentioned that you wanting to take a unique strategy or a unique position as far as distribution goes. Can you explain what you're looking to do once the film is done?
Yeah, and it's not like that's what I want to do, or I just wanted to make sure that I had a plan that wasn't going to be relying on anyone else in case no one came to my rescue, so to speak. Um, I think the most eye-opening episode on that Indie Film Hustle podcast that I recommend every filmmaker watch is the ones with Mark Toya, who made the film Monsters of Man back in 2020, I believe. And if you watch the trailer to the movie, you will think it's a big Hollywood production. It's kind of like a action thriller with like AI killer robots that parachute into the jungle and it's like shoot 'em up just like nonstop. And Mark Toya is a legend in the red space. Like almost everyone that shoots red cameras knows who he is. And unfortunately, he died not in like 2022, I guess. I tried to reach out to him and get some advice, and his wife emailed me back and said he had passed, that was really sad because I would have loved to see what he was going to do after this film. But he shot the film for $1 million, which is a lot of money, obviously, and to us. But when you see what he got, again, it looks like a 20, 30, $40 million film. In fact, if Hollywood would have made the exact same film, exact same cast, and had everything look exactly the same, probably $1 million would be their catering budget, because that's just the bureaucracy of that machine. They don't know how to scale things down, right? And he didn't have any big actors in it. He did have did the thing where he has Neil McCullen in it. If you know who that is, you would recognize his face. But he did the thing where like he's kind of a notable guy, and you could tell he shot him in a way where they probably got him in and out in 2 days because he kind of plays like the CIA guy back in The Office. But he's in the whole movie, but they probably got him in and out in a couple days so they could put his name on the poster. And he was out shopping around the film when he happened to hear Alex's podcast and get a hold of Alex's book. And what was really eye-opening to me is this guy made an amazing film, like absolutely should be on every platform, right? Like what we all wish we could do, right? And because of that, he actually did get a lot of those dream offers we dream about. I mean, he claims Netflix literally offered to give him $2 million for the film. And a lot of streamers were offering like basically his whole budget back, $1 million or whatever. But he's explaining on the podcast that even those deals, which are the deals we all dream about, right? We're all hoping we can make a movie, take it to festivals, and then some big distributor or Netflix comes along and like gives you your whole money back in a GM or something, right? But he was just explaining that even these deals are still terrible. Like what Netflix will try to do is they always try to make quarterly payments out of whatever the contract is. So if they have it for 3 years or 5 years, you're going to get paid 4 times, right? Throughout the life of that. And he had a lot of friends that he explained that did go that route, had sold their films to distributors, streamers, whatever. The films would be out. They would be on the platforms and they still weren't paying the filmmaker yet. There's always some discrepancy. They'll find, oh, we need the release form for this random actor way, way, way in the background. It's like, but the film's out. And you people should go listen to it because he explains a lot of that stuff. And that's when I realized, like, oh my gosh, you're telling me even when you actually knock it out of the park and do everything right, you still get screwed, basically? That sucks, right? And what he did is he just self-distributed. He had a huge background in like ad agency work because he's mostly was a commercial shooter before making this film. And he said, screw it. I'm going to put it online, use aggregators to get it placed on the TVOD platforms, and I'm going to push traffic with targeted ads. And he just really knew how to run Facebook ads, Instagram ads, YouTube ads. And his ROI was insane. And it's probably not replicable by anyone, but it was so insane. Like he said that they did a Kickstarter. He had 250,000 set aside to do marketing, because that's another thing people need to understand is you should definitely spend at the very least what you made the movie for in marketing. Like that is the formula. And I know that's super scary, right? I'm like, what? Where am I going to find another $100,000 to like market my movie? But if you really believe in the commercial part of the product, I'm speaking more as a producer now, obviously, then you have to do that, right? What he did, and he got lucky, is they did this little Kickstarter for advertising and raised like 30 grand. And he threw that at the trailer that was on YouTube. And he got like 50 million views out of it, which obviously a lot of that's organic traffic as well. And then a week or two later, they released the film on TVOD and they made $1 million in like 4 or 5 days, he says, right? And so he didn't spend the money he had right away. And he actually says that's his biggest regret, was not spending that money, because he knows if they would have dropped that $250K into that same advertising, they would have, maybe they made $5 million that opening month, right? Who knows? But throughout the 2 years that he had, because at this point on the podcast, it had been out for 2 years and he was just explaining the whole journey, he had consistently just thrown money into these targeted ads. And every time he's like, look, if I throw $5,000 in, I'm almost always getting 10 to 15 grand in gross sales, and just kept doing that for 2 years. And then he also talked about how he wishes he never would have switched over to any of the SVODs, because they were, Prime, I guess, was begging for it. Like, oh, this is perfect for Prime. And it is. It's a perfect film for Amazon Prime. He was like in the top 5 for like 4 months on Amazon Prime, getting like hundreds of millions of views. And he said he maybe made like a couple $100,000 from that. So it just shows you, like, on those platforms, I mean, your film is worth cents per view. And that's just so tough, right? Now, again, he had the perfect product for this, right? Like, you can't do this with every film. You can't go make like a no budget drama film with no stars, right? And expect to do this formula. Not if you spent this amount of money to make it, right? So you do have to have the right product for it. And when I was listening to all of that, I was like, okay, first of all, my film's going to be way less than $1 million. I will not have nearly as high as a hill to climb. And also, I have this niche audience that I know where they live. I even know how they get targeted, because I literally am that audience, and I get targeted with ads all the time, as do you, right? And all of us in this space. So the same way that you get hit with your YouTube ads and I get hit with mine on Instagram and whatever, that is the strategy I developed that Franco was really in love with, because I just never wanted to leave it in the hands of a distributor. I also thought it was going to be a lot smaller scale than it kind of ended up being. I mean, Franco's the last couple months is like, no, dude, that's great. You have that strategy, but we're going to do this traditionally, because this is way, like, I kind of blew him away when I came back with the footage. He was like, oh, you weren't kidding. Like, wow, like that looks like what you said it was going to look like. And even I kind of blew myself away too. Like I'm not trying to sound like cocky in any way. I'm just trying to help other people, realize what we did. And so I don't know what we're going to do if we're going to go with that route, but we're fully prepared for that route. And it's funny you brought up the content creator thing earlier. I feel like I'm pumping out more content now online than I ever have. And that's what my wife, after we finished the film, she transitioned into, she's been studying social media marketing. She's really good with, AI and learning stuff. And she's actually the one that makes all of our social content. So if anyone's like following our page, like our MCK Pictures, that's our production company page, all the videos we're dropping, that's her, editing that. And she's doing like the trial and error on like, well, different hooks, different things. Cause I don't really have time for any of that. I'm like talking to my editor every day. I'm talking with Franco every day, having meetings with different collaborators that might be coming on or not coming on, VFX companies, because I don't know that much about VFX. So I have to be very thorough, like as I do that search for people. And so she's doing that. So organically trying to build an audience there. To go along with, again, potentially paid ads. And then what's cool about our niche is we could also just like use the influencers in the niche and do like potential paid campaigns with them. The same way, DJI would reach out to Sam Colder, Sam Newton, these awesome guys in the travel space and do sponsored videos with them. We don't know exactly how we want to do those type of collaborations yet, but I've been having a lot of conversations with people in the niche, showing them the film, telling them how I want to get it out to the world. And a lot of them have had just a really natural, organic response to it. Like, wow, dude, like it's a feature film, like in our world. Like, and that's what I was hoping for, that they'd be excited. And, I could be totally wrong about this, by the way. Like this niche might not deliver for us. There's no guarantee of that. I could be way in over my head. But I'm confident that when this niche is aware of this film, if we can put it in front of their face, they will totally go buy it for $5 on a platform or whatever, price we're able to sell, because the niche can help you overcome a lot. One film that also gave me a lot of confidence in this manner is I skydive, which is kind of part of that travel world niche, but it's also its own thing too, right? And in 2021, I think it was, this film came out. It's called Hex, and it's a very low budget, micro budget, like horror film, but it has this skydiving element to it. It's about these skydivers. They do like a cursed skydive, and like the dude disappears mid jump, and then it kind of unravels into Final Destination type thing where the death is following them and they're all cursed, whatever. It's very low budget, and it's, other than kind of the skydiving scenes, it's very low quality. And I don't mean that like offensively. I actually talked to this filmmaker because I was like, tell me everything about how you made this film. And, he was like, hey, we just kind of did it for fun. We filmed the skydiving scenes. Then we shot the rest. And, I think even he would admit that without the skydiving niche, that film never really sees the light of day, probably. But right now, today, the only way you can watch that film is by buying it for $4.29 on the TVOD platforms, which is shocking, right? I'm knowing what you know, right? Like most indie films do not really have a TVOD run at all, let alone still exclusively being on TVOD like 3-4 years later. So, and when the film came out, I remember getting the trailers sent to me by every skydiver I knew in different group texts and whatever. So they ate it up. And maybe they were like laughing at it a little bit. Like, who cares? Like, it just shows that the niche can really overcome a lot. So that gave me more confidence. Like, okay, niche is very powerful. And if I go make as good of a film as I can and have it be as high quality as I can, I'll really get the niche. They might actually like the product, and maybe I can transcend that audience as well. There's a little bit of a religious faith element to my film as well. It's definitely like the secondary niche, you could say. But when it comes to marketing and advertising, I mean, we'll cut up trailers and use sound bites where that niche would love it. And that'll be a totally different targeted ad campaign than the one going after kind of the travel crowd, right? So again, like I'm speaking as a producer right now, not the director, that's what I love. That's what I want to be. But in this world, you got to learn how to be your own producer so you can greenlight your own film. Because I promise you, like, no one else is going to. And I've been talking nonstop to as many indie filmmakers as possible over these last couple years, and the cavalry isn't coming. Like, that's the unfortunate. Even when you make a film, it does not mean, I can't tell you how many guys I've talked to where they made a film and I was so psyched to talk to them. Like, what are you up to now? And they're actually in a depression because they did the blood and sweat and tears. They made a feature film. They kind of got it distributed. They got it out. And they just assumed that that would kind of lead to never having to go through that again. And unfortunately, that's just not the case, right? And it's sad. I hate that. I hate the market right now. It's terrible. So I'm just trying to find as many innovative ways that we can keep making indie films, because I love indie films. I love filmmaking. I want to watch other people's films. I want more films to be made. Hollywood's not really taking care of us much anymore. You know, I'm not a big fan of the most of the blockbusters, right? Rare instances like Dune, for example, I love, as you can see some of the stuff back there. But that's because you have an insanely talented storyteller, director collaborating with other amazing storytellers. So it works, right? But I'm not a fan of the Marvel movies, personally. That's just not my cup of tea. I love gritty, storytelling movies, and we're just not seeing that. And doing a lot of research on distribution. I'm a history nerd, so whatever I'm into, I want to know the history of it. So like basically DVD going away is what killed the indie film, right? Because in 2004, you could just pre-sell with the distributor based on DVD sales alone. And that's how a lot of people would budget their films. They would pre-sell to a distributor based on, hey, we know we're going to get DVD sales. And you remember, right? Going into Walmarts and the DVD bins and all sorts of films that you maybe never saw in the theater were making DVD sales, because that's a physical transaction. Even after Walmart takes their cut and the DVD company takes their cut, it's still a significantly bigger chunk of revenue than 30 cents, right? For the view on Tubi or Amazon Prime. I don't know what those exact numbers are, but I know they're extremely low, right? So because of that, in streaming services, it's just so hard to get an ROI on a film these days. And yes, distributors are predatory. Yes, the studios are annoying, but they're dealing with the same thing we are. They just are at scale so they can handle it better than us, but they're struggling, right? Like theatrical movies are barely making money half the time. I was super excited to see how well that Sinners movie is doing. And it was awesome, by the way. Everyone should go see it in IMAX. It was really well done. But just an original concept like that, like a true piece of art to like have the commercial success it's having, that's giving me hope. Not to mention kind of the deal that director got is really cool too. So my goal as like a producer and indie filmmaker is to help usher in what I really think is going to be a new wave in the way films are made. I mean, 10 years from now, will there even be the big studios like this? Probably. They always win in the end, right? But can we at least force them to adapt the model? Because if we can show, hey, without your help and without your millions of dollars, we're starting to pump out films that kind of look like yours, right? And the closer we can get to that, the more they're going to have to adjust, right? Because they're not going to want to leave that money on the table. And I hope my film and this production can be just maybe a small sliver of helping usher that in. But it's obviously going to take way more than just me. But I hope at the very least I can inspire other indie filmmakers that are probably way more talented than I am, that you can definitely find ways to make films, lean on what you know, write with what you have available, which in my case I know was kind of unique, but make it happen, because I really think there's a lot of change coming soon, very soon.
What advice would you give to filmmakers who want to kind of shoot unconventionally or in the locations that you shoot, but are worried about the logistics, budget, and the technical challenges behind it?
I mean, I would say one, again, kind of more producer talk here, but like, I would say really be honest with yourself on if the film you want to make is going to have any sort of commercial value or not, number one. Because if it doesn't, don't go spend a bunch of money on it. Just be okay with that, right? Like if I didn't think this film, and it just so I got lucky because I was just making this film because I wanted to make it and was not thinking about this at first. And it just so happened that as I was falling into this research, I kind of was already hitting a lot of things like with the niche and like the potential to have like bigger quality with these locations. So it worked that way. But if I didn't feel that, if I was just making some, gritty drama movie, I would have poured my heart and soul into it, but I would have not spent the money I spent, because there's almost no way without like maybe a movie star in it that I would have recouped. So I would say like that, number one. And then once you throw that to the side, I really think, and I didn't do this, I didn't go make short films. I am just now getting into like just jumping on everyone's sets. Like I want to see how everyone else is learning and operating. So I would say do what I didn't do and just make stuff. I actually envy the other YouTubers I follow and get advice from virtually, that they're pumping out more short films and pumping out more content. I kind of just decided to throw it all into a first feature, and we'll see how good that works or how smart that was. But that's what I would say is just don't be afraid to reach out to others, right? Like I'm an open book. People can message me, like as long as I have time in the schedule, I want to talk to everyone and I want to know what you're doing. I want to share what I'm doing. Because I think we all need to help each other. And I think almost all filmmakers are pretty open to collaboration. And I would say for people that want to direct, because probably if you're trying to make an indie film, you are a director slash producer, right? Understand, and I'm speaking more to the content creators too, that you don't have to learn everything and be a master of everything. When I was a content creator, like I had to be my own DP, I had to be good at coloring, or the colors wouldn't look good. I had to be good at every aspect of editing, or that editing wouldn't be good. As someone who wants to direct, I would say just focus on storytelling abilities. The YouTube channels I've been watching the last 2 years, 3 years now, are so different than the ones I was watching before that. I don't watch camera tutorials anymore. Like I don't care about gear. I'm watching, channels like yours when it comes to like understanding the back end of how this business works, right? Indie Film Hustle podcast. And I'm watching a lot of like um video essay channels, right? I'm really trying to understand how to be a good storyteller, because if I can become a really good storyteller and see a nice movie in my head and get it on paper, then I can find the people that would bring that to life. And there's so many people hungry out there to make stuff. And I would say if you do want to attract really talented collaborators, as I feel I was lucky enough to do on this project, try to create an environment that would attract them, right? Too many people want to go make some movie in their garage and they hope that this really awesome DP or gaffer is going to show up. And it's like, try to create something that's worth their while, right? In my case, a lot of people just taking them to Asia for 2 months, right? With a lot of these actors that weren't getting paid and stuff. Like, okay, they were in, they were down for the adventure. My DP was like, oh, we're gonna shoot there. Like I want to shoot a feature film and I haven't shot one yet. And it sounds like you kind of know what you're doing as a director, maybe. Okay, I'm in. And now in post, it's been the same thing. I've been so blessed that when I've been collaborating with editors or looking for editors, a lot of them were like, dude, like I want in. Like I see that footage and I want to make something with that. So I think that's it. Like if you want to direct and make a film, right? Which is different than saying I want to be a DP, I want to be an AC. Like I don't really know how to speak to those people, I don't think, because that's not me. I want to be a director. More than I don't really want to be a producer, but I just kind of have to be. So I want to be a director and make films, a filmmaker, which is different than a film worker, which I think a lot. So you have to decide what you want to be. That would be my first advice. Do you want to be on sets, pulling focus, PAing because you love the environment? Or do you want to make the film and like be the storyteller, be one of those type of collaborators? And if you do, honestly, it's really awesome. You don't have to be working as a filmmaker. I took a full-time job at a college. It was like as a videographer, like head of their media. Because I was like, oh, I just want to make this film and this job is going to give me the steady income and the relaxation to do that and prep this film for a year. Where before that, I would have been like, what? No, I'm a freelance filmmaker. Like I can't, that's my identity. If I can't take an office job, right? But no, like it doesn't matter where you make your money. If you can use your filmmaking skills to also give you your income, that's awesome. That's great. I still do that a lot too, because most of my skills that would pay the most are in that field. But do whatever you have to do to make the films you want to make. When I was shooting weddings and stuff all the time, I was just as unhappy as I would have been sitting in an office, maybe even more unhappy because it's a lot of physical work, right? So, I mean, that would just be my biggest advice. If you want to direct and like be a filmmaker, just focus on being a good storyteller. And if you are a good storyteller and you can show that to people, you will attract good collaborators. And then your images will look great because you'll have a great DP and you'll have a great gaffer and you'll have a great editor and all those people, right? So that's my biggest advice for anyone that's trying to make indie films right now.
You've mentioned the creator a couple of times, but I don't know if this is going to be your answer to this question, but one question I always like to leave off on is if you could have worked on any film, either, something you wish you would have directed or just been on set to experience, what would it be and why?
Well, I definitely wouldn't want to direct any of these films because then they would probably suck and not be the gems that they are. But I'd have to say The Lord of the Rings. I mean, those are, in my opinion, still the greatest pieces of cinema ever made. And at that time, right? I mean, they're shooting those in the late, it's like 1999, 2000. And obviously those films have a ton of incredibly good CGI and computer graphic work, but only when absolutely necessary. I mean, if anyone hasn't seen behind the scenes of The Lord of the Rings, do it, because one, it's the greatest behind the scenes series ever. We're talking probably 10 plus hours of like, what does Peter Jackson call them? Like the appendices or something. It's just incredible. So much detail. And so many miniatures were built. So many big sets were built. I mean, the scale of that movie was incredible. And I love those movies. So that's probably my answer is if I could have just been a fly on the wall on those sets, that would be amazing for sure.
Michael, thank you so much for coming on today. I mean, this a wealth of knowledge is an understatement for sure. And I'm definitely curious to see just how everything turns out for you. I'm excited to see, just what happens next. Where can people learn more about you? Where can more people learn about your projects? Go ahead and plug away.
Oh yeah. So I mean, right now I do have a YouTube channel. Which probably just find Michael Kerkering and you'll find it. If you type in like Michael Kerkering Iceland video, that was like my last travel video from back in the day. So that's my YouTube channel, which I'm gonna get back to posting on soon. I'm gonna make a whole behind the scenes docu-series from this production. So I've been working really hard on that. But right now on Instagram, just Michael Kerkering. And then where most of the content is dropping is on our production page, MCK Pictures, on Instagram. So that's where I am.
I want to give Michael another huge shout out for coming on the channel and speaking so candidly with me. It's really awesome to get a peek behind, just travel content in general. And it's crazy to think that he was able, to make such a massive film on such a small budget. I'm certainly curious to see how this film turns out, and we'll have to follow up with him at some point once he hits distribution, because I really want to know how this film ends up taking off. And I want to thank you, of course, for watching this all the way through if you've made it here to the end. If you like this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you can see more awesome interviews like this one. And something I want to touch on too, something I haven't really talked about on this channel, but Michael talked about, just the wanting to collaborate, with other filmmakers and talk to other filmmakers too. I just want to say, like, if you got a filmmaking channel or something and you want to interview me, I'm open for business, baby. So if you want to talk to me, I'm open to definitely collaborating. So don't be shy. Reach out to me. My email address is in the description. As always, if you want to help support me, I do have some links in my description as well, such as being able to watch my first feature film, Cashing Out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.